service provider who's struggling to attract high paying clients consistently? Sick of churning out blog post after blog post that gets zero engagement? If you're nodding furiously, then drop everything as we have one packed episode you will not want to miss. Conversion content marketing master Deirdre Chen from CapShow is finally pulling back the curtain to reveal her closely guarded AI content system for getting a steady stream of dream clients and customers heading your way, and all on autopilot. In this episode, you'll discover how to ethically combine your expertise with cutting edge AI technology to create insanely valuable content that has your ideal clients whipping out their wallets. No more racking your brain for fresh content ideas or staring at a blank screen for hours. Deirdre went from dead broke to a wildly profitable multi six figure business by mastering this AI content strategy that we'll share today. And now she's finally sharing all her closely guarded secrets, tips, tricks, and step by step formulas. So, with that, Deirdre, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, Michael. This is it's going to be such a blast.
Yeah, no, really exciting, and I know a lot of our listeners have been anxiously looking forward to this episode. And to be honest with you, I have myself as well. And I think at a high level, what you've done there at CapShow is really amazing. And hoping you could share some of the backstory with us and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in entrepreneurship for over a decade. I started in hospitality, but I'm going to short circuit that particular story because there was a lot that happened in that journey and talk about 4 years ago when I started a coaching business. It was one thing led to another, and I kind of fell into coaching for e-commerce businesses with helping them with their digital marketing. And that was when I started my first podcast as well. At the time, it was called the Growth Boss Podcast. And it was basically, yeah, me sharing my expertise and stories about growing a product based business online. And, uh, you know, it was one thing. What I found, what I figured out, and I don't know if anyone else listening to this who has a podcast for their business as well has seen this, but when you like put so much effort into creating content and you're like, you hit the publish button and it's like, yes, oh, that felt good.
Yeah.
And then you very quickly realize that um, that's like not the end of it because you have to actually get it out there and you have to actually get it in front of people. Like people have to find it and they have to discover it and then they have to listen to it. And
Exactly.
there's actually so much that goes into having to like market your content that I didn't realize. I didn't know when I started my podcast. Did you run into that as
I
well?
think so many people listening have had that exact experience, and really, I
Yes.
think that is the magic of what you've done, and really
Yeah.
how you got there is what everyone wants to know.
Yeah, for sure. So that's, it was kind of like with that realization and going, okay, well, if I'm going to commit to this thing, because it's a lot of work to have whether it's a podcast or whether it's even a YouTube channel, it's a ton of work to create that content. And so it's a shame to not actually have it be consumed. And so for me, I started really, really nerding out on what are all the different ways that all the organic ways that we can actually get our content out there. And so, I partnered with social media experts. I partnered with, even YouTube experts and different people to really get under the hood of what it actually takes to create basically a conversion content machine. And so uh, this version of CapShow, which I'm really, really excited. We actually rebuilt CapShow and we're literally about to launch it. So, Michael, you and your audience are one of the first to hear all about what it is that we're doing there.
I love it.
Um, it actually is incredibly smart around the conversion pieces. So just to step back, we launched CapShow, 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago. And it was before the hype of ChatGPT and all the AI things happening. And we really launched it. What happened was we went to a conference called Podfest. So it's a podcasting conference.
Sure.
And when we spoke to all the people there, this was back in May of 2022. time and time again, the one thing that we heard was like, oh my gosh, show notes. Show notes are the bane of a podcaster's existence, right? Like writing those show notes. And so that's actually what we launched with. Our very first iteration of Cap Show was, okay, we're going to help podcasters with their show notes. But my heart was always in the marketing and especially the conversion
Sure.
side of things. So very quickly, that's where we took the product to. And now I'm really excited to share about Cap Show Next Gen.
And let's face it, if you have an endless wallet and plenty of money to spend on paid ads,
Hmm.
there's not a person listening to the podcast that could not get their content out there. But I think the magic of what we're talking about today is that word that you said earlier, you know, organic, getting the
Mm,
organic content out there and generating massive amounts of traffic through organic content. That is the
yes.
magic. So yeah, tell us more.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll start with so I have this overall framework that I talk to that's called the honey trap method. But I just want to give that frame, but then I really want to dive deep into maybe we'll talk social media. And I know that we want to talk about the ethics part of it of also using AI. So I'll try to cover as much of that as
Sure.
possible. Um, but when we think about, so the honey trap method is all about that conversion content marketing. It's basically an ecosystem that you are creating around I call it your anchor content or your content event. It's really the marketing system, the organic marketing system that you're creating around it. So what that means and looks like is, uh, let's take social media as the example. I don't know about you, Michael, but like I used to post on, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, I used to post something and it would be like crickets, right? Like
Sure. I think a
I'd
lot of
like,
people listening have experienced that.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. And, a lot of times I was like, okay, well, I published my podcast episode or I went, live on YouTube and now I'm going to share about the fact that that podcast episode is available. So it's like, podcast episode just dropped. It's, I had the pleasure of speaking to XYZ and we spoke about this. And it was just like, no one wanted a bar of that.
Yeah. And how do you get that
And
engagement? That's the key,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So, I was speaking to Katie Brinkley, who is an absolute social media expert, and I started working with her around like how we actually, to your point, like we get that engagement, we get that reach, but really importantly, she calls it a 4-post social media strategy, and I'll share what those 4 posts are as well. But the 4-post social media strategy is all about getting the right people, like as in your ideal audience, to raise their hands, to put up their hands, to be like, I want to learn more. And there's actually a really cool, like psychological, way that this works. Not just psychological from a human perspective, but also it kind of feeds into the algorithm, which isn't actually the primary purpose of this, but it's a byproduct of the fact that you are generating engagement and you're actually getting in front of the right people.
Sure.
So what we do is, you know, I am a big, big believer that the anchor content, the content that we create as experts, as with a coach, a consultant, a service provider, as someone who has the experiences that we want to share, we have stories that we want to share with our audience. I'm a big believer that our content, our anchor content, has to be from us, right? Like what we're doing here now, Michael, like you are creating this content. You've gotten me or any other guests that you've had on as the expert in their space. And we're just having a really great conversation and we're
Sure. Just genuine
teaching and
dialogue that is
exactly,
human and really
exactly.
expresses emotion.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know that there are other, there are solutions out there that is starting to get into, okay, well, how do we have AI create this? And I mean, I have friends who actually have, software products in that space. And I don't quite agree with that approach because you do like when you think about why it is that we're creating content, it is actually, and I hope this is for everyone, it's actually to connect with another human on the other side of whether it's the earbuds or TV screen or computer screen, right? We're creating that connection. And so I am a big believer that for this content, it has to be human generated. But it doesn't mean that the content thereafter can't be AI assisted. And
Right.
that's where Capsho comes in. Yeah,
And I think at a high level, the content needs to add value to the internet,
for
by
sure.
just taking what's already out there and regurgitating. I think that's where we're seeing Google and the other search engines throw their hands up in the air and say,
Yes.
"Hey, how many times can we index the
The
same
same
content
thing,
over and over
exactly.
again?"
Yeah.
If you're not adding to the internet, what is it that
Yes.
you're doing? And I would agree with you. I
100%.
think that is the magic of
Yeah.
what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it was really funny because when we were at another conference in January of last year, so over a year ago, that was just after ChatGPT, pretty much launched, and they became super big. And we had people coming up to be like, well, what's the difference between Capsho and ChatGPT? And really what it comes down to is exactly what you said. ChatGPT is great. Like, we sometimes use it more from an idea generation perspective,
Sure.
but that's what ChatGPT just goes out to the internet and like brings it all back and basically serves it to you on a platter. But what Capture does is it starts with your content, like with your anchor content. So you upload your audio or video file into Capture, and then it creates content off the back of that. And one of the pieces that it creates is social media posts, and it depending on what platform that you're on, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or even Instagram, like it actually creates different posts for you.
Sure.
And it actually follows the Katie Brinkley's 4-post social media strategy, which is, I'll just quickly rattle them up what those 4
Sure.
are.
No, that's
It's
helpful.
awareness post, it's then tip post, it's community post, and it's action post. Now, let me break each of these down and tell you why this approach works.
Okay.
So let's say that the action that you want off the back, and we can use this episode as an example. So, Michael, you're going to publish this podcast episode at some point,
Sure.
and that the week after, you might want to promote the fact that this podcast episode went live, right? Like, you want
Right,
people
exactly.
to listen to it. So that's the action. Okay. So this is already starting to flip the way that we think, right? Because a lot of times, like, and it's also across 4 posts, i.e. a week, essentially. So it's not just like, podcast gets like episode drops and then we promote it. It's like, nope, podcast episode drops and then we actually we garner interest in order to get them to act. Okay, so
that's your
what does that?
awareness. Yep.
Exactly. So the awareness post really looks like it's kind of like, how do you go out and get people to raise their hands? And a lot of times this is depending on the platform as well, it could be different. So for example, on LinkedIn, polls are really popular, like really, really popular to get a good amount of engagement and to actually get people to do something, to act right on your
Right.
post, because they're actually physically like pressing a button. Facebook, what works really well are things like unpopular opinions. So just a statement, which is like generally on, like those purple backgrounds. It's just
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really eye catching, right? So it actually works really well. And so that's where like the psychology comes in. But the reason why that happens to play into the algorithm is that the more engagement that you get on there, the more that those platforms want to actually keep showing that post
Right.
to
Because
other
it helps
people.
people keep engaged in that
Exactly. And
platform.
stay
Yeah.
on that platform. Yeah, exactly.
And they can show more ads.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can see how this is working,
Yeah.
right? So, an unpopular opinion works really well because when you're sometimes when you're quote unquote contrary, even if that's not necessarily what you think,
Right.
people cannot help but be like, you're off your
Intrigued.
rockers, or
Yeah.
type thing. So yeah, that works really well. And the great thing is, like, the reason why it works well to get people to your ideal audience to raise their hand is because all of the content you're creating is based on a particular premise. So, for example, you could take, Michael, from this episode, you could take the premise about how to create human and AI content ethically, like some kind of theme around that, right? And that actually plays really well into unpopular opinion, because an unpopular opinion could be all my content needs to be generated by AI. Agree or disagree?
Right.
Question mark, right? And people will be like, agree or disagree. No way. Human has to be involved in whatever that is.
Right. And you get some controversy going there.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that with that premise, with that topic, you've already got people who are commenting care about that.
Right.
Do you see where this is leading?
So
like
generated that awareness, and you have the right
people
engaged
actually engaging.
Yeah.
Right. So that's your awareness post. This is why it works really, really well. Okay. And then the next post is then the tip. And the tip post is basically like you're giving value. And again, the reason why this works is you've got people on your first post raising their hands, being like, I like what you're saying, or I don't like what you're saying, Michael, and I've told you. And you ever notice where whichever platform you're on, when you engage with someone's content, their content keeps showing up for you, right?
Right.
Because
absolutely.
again, this is the algorithm at work. Facebook or whatever platform are like, oh, Michael really likes engaging on Deirdre's content. We're going to keep showing him her content. And so because you engage, or well, let's say the other way around, say I engaged on your initial awareness post, Michael, and I'm like, I disagree. The human has to be part of the content creation process.
Right.
Then when you drop your tip post and you go into a little bit more detail about what was actually shared on this podcast around like the value, the learning, the actual give, then then that gets surfaced back to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what Michael meant when he was starting this conversation about this particular topic. And then the third, and again, there's a bit of engagement on that. And then on the third post, which is the community post, now this is where like a lot of us miss, because especially when we're entrepreneurs, and I did this myself, is like, I just want to share about my business. I just want to share about what it is I have to offer. Like, it's really hard to remember that, that saying people always say, you've got to be social on social media.
Right.
I never really took that to heart. Like, I think I rationally understood it, but I was like, I don't really quite understand what that means in practice. And this is what it means. So we're going to then take that premise. So, human and AI generated content. And Michael, you're actually going to share a story, a personal story for you. Like, whether or not that was like, let's say you tried, because I know some people who've done this, they've tested a fully AI generated content machine, like from start to finish. And so if that was you and you tried that, then you can share your own story and your experiences having done that, and the results maybe that came from that. And it's like, and it didn't do anything for me, and so I just scrapped all of that. But you see how like you're now bringing in your story, but making it relevant to the topic that I'd kind of already opted in to.
Absolutely. So everyone within the platform can understand how it impacted me. Having done this.
Yeah, exactly. Or you might even share about, I don't know if you have kids, Michael, but let's say if you do, there you go. Then you might be like, yeah. And then do they have a hobby? Like, do they play sport or?
You bet. Yeah. Exactly. They have way too many hobbies.
Right. Okay. So you could be like, I now am able to take every Friday off, to go and take my daughters to XYZ hobby sport, whatever it is, because
more quality family time, whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I now use AI in my content generation. Like, so that's you again, bringing your own personal story to the platform and to your audience. So that's the community post. The community post is really about like really, gathering that community around you and what it is that you do from a more of a life perspective.
Right.
Because
and then, I think it'll resonate with a certain segment of the audience. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, for sure. And that genuine. People, well, that's the thing, like on social, that's why they say be social on social media, because like we can't help, like there's a reason why reality TV shows, became such a hit, is because like people can't help but be a little bit voyeuristic. Like they want to know what happens in other people's lives.
Right.
And so that's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of letting people into, a little bit about you and your life. And so you do generate quite a bit, and I do for sure generate quite a bit of engagement on those posts. The great thing about those posts as well is that, and this is why it's called community, is that a lot of times I'll actually tag different, depending on the story that I tell, I'll tag those relevant people in. And so you've already got inbuilt engagement because, I don't know about you, but whenever I'm tagged on something, like you just can't
You
help
want to
but like,
check to see what's
right?
going on. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and you engage on that. So that's the community post, and then the fourth one then is the action post, which is like, hey, look, you've not in these words, but
Yeah,
how we think through it is like, you've been following me this week on this journey about AI and human generated content. Why don't you actually listen to the conversation I had with Deirdre on this podcast episode? And we don't generally drop links depending on the platform you're on. LinkedIn doesn't really care about links being dropped, but I think we all know that
right.
Facebook, doesn't love that. So it's more like, if you want to listen to this podcast, comment, podcast below, and then you can actually start a conversation even in the thread, like in the comments, or you can take that to the DMs
Right.
with that person. And so you can kind of see why, like, how this starts to become a conversion content marketing machine that we're building here, because all the content that we're creating is actually with a goal in mind. And that's what I've become so passionate about, because with AI and with the proliferation of AI and therefore like all of this content that we can create, like the risk is that, and what we're seeing more and more on the internet, which is why the likes of Google and YouTube and stuff are starting to penalize AI generated content, is because some people, I'm not saying anyone listening to this, and
Sure.
certainly not you, Michael, but like some people create content for content's sake. They're just like vomiting all over the internet, like,
Right.
because it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's easy, so I'm just gonna like, yeah, here we
Yeah.
go. Like, here's all this content. And I'm so passionate about, like, we have to be super intentional with the content that we're creating, not just for you as the entrepreneur, but also for your audience. Like, how are you actually giving to your audience? And so even when you see with this example of the 4-post social media strategy, it's like, it's so great because not only does it help you as the owner of the account, or as the entrepreneur, but it's actually creating something that your audience cares about and wants to engage with,
Yeah.
which
And
is
it's a
really cool.
perfect example of less is more,
Yes.
obviously generating high quality content that's meaningful
Yeah.
and communicating, in those four areas, and expressing some unique opinion is so important.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what Capture Next Gen. So it will actually help with those 4 posts, those exact 4 posts. I mean, the community post, it more gives ideas because obviously it can't read your mind and doesn't know your
Right.
memories. It doesn't, but it will actually prompt you to be like, hey, this is, based on the topic or the premise of your episode or your video or whatever it is, like, here are some ideas of what it is that you could talk about, what you could share for
Yeah.
this post.
And I think it's so interesting. At a high level, everyone wants to automate everything and be able to go to the beach and sip margaritas. But the
Yes.
reality of it is, it is work, and it's called work for a reason.
Mm.
And I think that AI is a tool, and it's just that. It's something that can help
Yes.
to magnify the efforts that you're putting in, but it doesn't replace
No.
the effort that's required. So
100%. Yeah. So it can definitely like fast track a lot of things, but it cannot do the work for you. I think you're exactly right in saying that, Michael, for sure.
yeah. Now, this is very exciting to hear about the new version of the solution.
Mm.
Can you
Yes.
maybe compare and contrast, like explain like where it was and where it's heading, and
Yeah.
what some of the recent updates are that
Yes, for sure. For sure. So I would say that there's like probably 3 main buckets of like improvements that we rebuilt with Capture Next Gen.
sure.
And I'll tell you a little bit about, like, because I'm okay with being transparent, but I don't, if anyone listening to this who maybe has worked on software before probably knows about this. I was speaking to Jay Cron. He was one of the founders of Kajabi. And when he spoke, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so glad that we weren't the only one, because he was talking about the fact that, like 6 months in, his co-founder, who was the CTO, was like, Kenny, he was like, we have to completely rebuild Kajabi. Like, knowing where, the industry was headed and and technology was
Sure.
headed, it was like they just had to rebuild it. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad, because like I thought that we were the only software product that was like silly or, whatever enough to have to actually rebuild. But I think this happens all the time in this industry where, we had an idea, we kind of like knocked it up really quickly together. But when you do that, you create dirty code. It's a little bit like
Yes.
we all go through that. And then it's
and
like, oh,
and and the reality of it is everything takes longer, costs more,
yes.
and sometimes rebuilding something is more challenging than starting from scratch with a blank piece of paper and just getting it done exactly the way you want to get it done. And it
Yes.
sounds
Yeah,
like that
for
that
sure.
that's what you yep.
Yeah. So anyway, we have been on the journey last few months of rebuilding Capsho, but where the three buckets are, the first is that next gen is much more strategic around the content that it creates. So for example, like that 4-post social media strategy, in the original version of Capsho, when we look at social media, we were just like, didn't really have a strategy. It was more like, well, we know that posts are pretty much are around something like there's a promotional post because we all want to be promoting something. There's like engagement style posts, and then there's like educational style posts, right? So that was we just kind of were a lot more general with the content that we were creating. But now you can probably tell how passionate I am about like create content with intention. That's exactly what we've moved to in next gen, where there is actually a strategy around the content that our AI helps entrepreneurs create. So that's one big, that's one big shift. A second big shift is that we call it next gen because it has been built with intelligence. So what that means and looks like is that at its core, it's a self-learning platform now. So before it was like it still had an editor. It was cool because it gave you options and stuff, but you still had to like, you had to do quite a bit of work, and each time you would have to like make sure that it was edited in your tone of voice
Right.
and things like that. Whereas now it's like the self-learning platform. It will learn your tone of voice. It will learn the way you like to write. It will learn how you like to structure your text-based edits, like all of that. It will actually learn and start to actually automatically apply that to content that it creates for you
Got
ongoing.
it.
So totally self-learning. Um, and the third big thing is probably just like a massive uplift in the experience of using it. So everything from the editor experience, including things like, we're going to be, it's next off the block. It's not there like quite right now, but it's going to be very, very imminently. Our editing experience is going to be, you're basically going to have an assistant inside of your editor where you can like we call him Monty because that's our sloths. So
I love
Monty,
it. There you go.
Monty, our sloth, will help you actually like whether it's truncate sentences or expand on things. It'll help you change perspectives really easily. You can build in negative or positive words. So it's like, hey, I never use the word unlock, for example,
Sure.
because it's a very AI, so you
Well,
can actually like create your own word banks and things like that. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a much more intelligent editing
yeah,
experience.
and a woman after my own heart, because user experience and ease of use and UX design is so important to me,
Mm,
and I think it makes the relationship between anyone and the solution, much deeper, and really allows it to become just that, an assistant.
yes, for sure. So, yeah, so those are three really big things, but we have a ton of like awesome things coming down the pipe. So yeah,
That
it's super exciting.
that's amazing. Now, can you give me an example or two of someone that's using the solution and what it looks like, what their experience is from, maybe a day in the life of someone
Mm.
using the solution?
Yes. So I want to talk about Sandy. So she's Sandy Scalata. So she's amazing. She's a podcaster, also a coach. And she went from, she was averaging about 1,000 downloads on her podcast. So her whole aim was like, I want to increase my download numbers, because she knows that if she can build her audience on her podcast, which is like her main content, creation vehicle,
Sure.
that then she can actually get people, get to know, like, and trust her, and then they'll want to work with her, right? So she can get
Right.
clients off the back of that. And so it's great because she's someone who just had focus, and she went from 1,000 downloads per month average to within 4 months of using this to get 48,000 downloads. And
Wow.
actually, really recently, I actually on Capture account on LinkedIn, I published a article about with her case study, and she actually commented on that, and she was like, Deirdre, we're now at 125,000 downloads a month. So she's gone from
I love it.
1,000 to 48,000 to now 125,000 downloads in a month using Capture.
She hit the
So
algorithm.
seriously, it's amazing. And so it's just people like her that we're just so passionate about helping, because they get it and they do the work. And by the way, Capture, the software, helps doing the work so much easier. So why wouldn't you?
Right. No, absolutely. So
Yeah.
that helps a lot. And what would you say has been like the most surprising um, use of CapShow that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, I think because uh, I always get so pleasantly surprised when people are like, "Oh, I just take this thing and I do this thing with it." Like, where they just change the way that it was built, but it's really cool. So, for example, Katie, so she uses Capture, and she's like, yeah, for a lot of like thinking about what the premise of her week's post is going to be, she'll look at the quotes, for example, that Capture generates, and she'll actually break up the quote to be like, oh, this is really great starting point for me to use this premise. And she always talks about an example where she interviewed a TikTok expert, and the interview, I mean, it was broadly around TikTok, and but there was one quote that was pulled out around how how effective TikTok can be to grow an email list. And so that's actually the thread that she pulled on to be the main premise, that because she knows that for her audience, growing an email list is actually something that they really care about.
Sure.
And so just because from that one quote that Capture pulled out, she just had so many ideas and created just a bank of like content that really resonated with her audience. And so just like hearing different uses like that is really cool.
Yeah, no, and it's so important. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that action that the podcaster is looking for their
Mm-hmm.
audience to take, whether
Yes.
it's generating visits to a website, to a
Yeah.
sponsor, you know signing up for an email list, whatever that action is their lead. It's
Yeah.
the actual action that they're looking to promote. So, as far as like some tips for some of our listeners that may be looking to generate more leads through their content, more
Mm-hmm.
leads through the ways that their audience is interacting with their content, do you have
Yes.
a short list of suggestions?
Oh gosh, so many things. Okay, so if I go back to the honey trap method, what that is essentially is kind of like, just imagine like a horizontal line on, and imagine that at the very beginning of that horizontal line, it says, and so anyone who has pen and paper handy can write this down, but it says push content. The push content then goes to your content event. Your content event then goes to your pull content, and then you get your evergreen content. Okay, so if you think about, there's 4 pieces, right, that we want to be thinking about. This is relevant to your question, Michael. So I'm
Sure.
getting there, I promise.
No, it's funny. I several times while we're talking, I feel like I want to get my pen out to write these things down so I can hear people hitting the stop and rewind button to
Yeah.
to listen to this episode again. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the content, I'm going to start with the content event. So that's the second piece that I spoke about, right? The content event is really any, it can be a podcast episode that you publish. It could be a YouTube video that you publish. It could be a YouTube live. It could be a Facebook live. Essentially, it's like any event where you are creating or publishing content, and it's really audio or video content, right?
Sure.
Now, that content needs to lead to a bridge funnel. I call it bridge funnel because generally it's going to be some kind of it's going to be either a lead magnet, so you're getting them onto your email list, i.e. you're bridging people into an offer at some point. It's going to be, say, a workshop or a masterclass or a challenge, basically something where you're bridging people from, oh, I really like what you said in this episode, to, oh, now I know what you do and what you have to offer and I'm ready to buy, right? So so you want to lead people from this content. So Michael, you might be like, hey, go join Capshow.
Right.
That could, and then, and that leads to a bridge funnel. Anyway, so that's like the content event, right? Now the push content. So what I spoke about with the 4-post social media strategy, that's actually the part of the pull content. So that's the third piece that I spoke about. And the reason why I call it pull content is because it's pulled from your content event, right? Like it's kind of, quote unquote repurposed, but it's also pulling people back to your content event. That's what you want to be doing, right? Getting people back to your content event so that they go through, then they go and opt into your bridge funnel.
Right.
Now, what people don't generally think about is the push content. I know, Michael, you do this pretty well. But the push content is, how do you push people even before the thing went live to your content event?
Sure.
Now, a lot of people think about doing this for lives because generally when it's a live, you want people to show up and, you want eyeballs or earbuds on the thing. But you can actually do push content on pre-recorded things as well. And I think a lot of people forget about this. And so the push content is all about the really magical thing about push content is it can do like 3 things, which is crazy. It can get you engagement on like social media or even on email. If you're emailing this out, it can get you like emails, like leads, because you want people to register for something. And it gets you engagement as well. Actually, did I say that as the first one? What did I say? It gets you, anyway, I forgot which 3. But it actually gets you engagement also with the right people, right? On social media. So how this works is I call it the say me process, right? So there's like 3 steps to it. So, or 3 posts, let's say 3 posts / emails. So the first one is literally the say me post. And that's like, hey, I'm going to have Deirdre on my podcast and we're going to be talking about how to leverage social media to grow your audience. Let's say it's not really the best talk, but we'll go with that for now for this example. Who wants a cheat sheet or a guide or a social media template? Say me below.
Yeah.
Like that, like who here wants a guide like to convert from your social media content? Say me below, right? And people are literally going, say me, like they're going me, right? And so then off the back of that, you want to send them to a registration page for your content event, even if it's not a live, right? Even if it's just a podcast drop or something, you want them to register because you get to grow your email list. Like this is a great thing, right? So you're getting people they're growing their email list. They're saying me. And then so that's the first post or email. Then the second one is all about the benefits, like why is this important? Like why do people want to care about this? And then the third one is a bit of a social proof or a case study, something that you can share about that, about what it is that you're going to be talking about at that content event. So to answer your question about like, I'm going all the way back around to like, how do we grow or like get leads? It's actually at every step of the way. And this is why, again, creating content with intention is so important because this is what happens. Like every step of the way, you're actually creating an opportunity for you to get leads. So even pre-event, at the event, post-event, and then even with your evergreen. So the way that I think about evergreen, which is the 4th part, of the 4th component, is this is when you're now transitioning your content to have it be search-based. So discoverable. So I'm talking about blog posts. I'm now talking about if you're on YouTube, talking about going from curiosity-based titles to statement-based search titles, so that people are now able to discover it through something that they're
And
searching.
I mean, there's so many threads to pull out there, but we may have to retitle this as a masterclass. But I love it. But and what's interesting when you speak about evergreen content, one of the tools that we developed internally for just that, we have many times we'll have a guest on the show, and you know you're like me, sometimes you have a child in one hand, you have a cup of coffee in the other hand, you're running out the door, you have so many things going on, and the person you're listening to on the video is really interesting and you want to follow through, but it's like you can't at the moment. They're like, click on the link below the video or comment, and you're like, I can't do that.
Yes.
So what we've actually developed internally, and we literally just launched as a SaaS solution, we're calling it Yabasoft Interactive Video, and it's literally the ability to click on the video, to click on a link right within the video, to take action right at that moment. And
Super cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, we all, let's face it, everyone is busy, life happens, things happen, and
Hmm.
sometimes being able to follow through or comment is not possible at the moment. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that as a solution, because that is part of evergreen content. Because when you think about, blog posts, or, and I'm assuming that's where you would just embed it on a video that you would have on a
Absolutely.
page.
So
Yeah.
any of the videos that we have at the softwareoasis.com website have clickable links right within
Yeah.
the videos.
Awesome. So yeah, that's exactly right. And that, because when you think about that evergreen content, as long as it's searchable and therefore discoverable, that should lead to your bridge funnel. And what you're creating, Michael, is exactly that. It's like, here's the link back to my bridge funnel so that you actually get people opting in for where you ultimately want them to go, so that they get nurtured by you, and they get to know what it is that you do, and they want to pay you money. So
Absolutely. And
that's,
it's
yeah.
it's so amazing. I think one of the most interesting things to me is, how products evolve and get developed. And a
Hmm.
lot of it is just customer feedback and listening to what your customers are saying to you and what they're telling you. And it sounds like that's a big part of how Capsho
Mm.
has evolved as a solution. It sounds like you've taken a lot of feedback from the community.
Oh, for sure. Yes, 100%.
So obviously you mentioned some of the recent advances in the platform, and that's
Hmm.
neat. So if you were sitting in the seat of some of our listeners saying, sounds neat, but I've also seen XYZ, some other solution. Are there a couple of bullet points that you feel make the solution really stand out, that you'd want to highlight, that some of our listeners might look at and say, yeah, okay, that's exactly why I need to pull the trigger and do this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've spoken to like some really key ones. Like the biggest is, like, we're not for everyone. I'm just going to be upfront about that, and we
Sure.
designed it to not be for everyone. We really want to be serving entrepreneurs, so coaches, consultants, service providers who are creating content and actually want a result from their content marketing, which should hopefully be everyone. But I also know that some people just want to content vomit all over the internet. If that's Capture's probably not for you. If you're just like, you know what, I don't care, I just want to like really quickly, ChatGPT is cheap, and it's whatever, and so I'm happy to just like create pretty relatively generic content. um that's cool. Like, if that's you, Capture's probably not for you. But if you actually want to, you've been following along with, like, say, the 4-post social media strategy, you're like, oh, I really like what Deirdre's talking about by way of like how each post is designed. I really like, because, and you can imagine when we have YouTube assets and blog, like everything will follow really.
Yeah, really crafting the
Yeah,
content and
exactly.
packaging it correctly, to do just like that case study that you gave an example of, really
Exactly.
just to cut out all the fluff and just get directly to results. It sounds like that
Yes.
that is the
That's
key.
the main, yeah. And what we're actually doing, so, I mentioned, Michael, that you and your audience are one of the first to hear about Capture Next Gen, because literally, like, it's launching at the time of this recording in 2 weeks. And for founding members, what we're actually doing is you can join at a founding member price. It's ridiculous. It's 20% of what the price is going to be for Capsho Club. So it's going to be a membership of which the software is part of it, but we're actually also going to be creating and providing support and resources to help people succeed. So if you're like, the 4-post social media strategy sounds amazing, let's say, for example, sounds amazing. The software, I think we all know that tools can only get you so far, but we're so invested in our community and helping them succeed to get those results, like what I shared with Sandy, that,
Sure.
we have this crazy founding member offer
So
that, Michael, you
if
can
people
share.
click on that link that we're going to leave above the video, they'll be able to
Yes.
take advantage of that offer.
Yes, they sure will.
I love it. No, that's fantastic. So that really locks in that special pricing for people now
Mhm.
and as they upgrade through to the new platform.
Yes. So if they get in now, we only have 100 spots available.
Okay.
So get in now at the founding member price, and that will go up by 180% if it's 20% of the price. Yeah. Is that right? I don't know
A
if
good
that maths
amount.
is. Yeah,
I'm
it's
never
going to go
good
up by
with on the spot math.
Yeah,
So,
I know, me neither.
but any which way, no. I mean, obviously, that's a very generous offer, and we'll make that available to everybody at softwareoasis.com. But really, I think as different organizations are looking to up their game in terms of social strategy and all of that, and really kind of tip the scales, reduce the bucket in terms of, not spending crazy amounts of money on paid advertising, but
Hmm.
generating the conversions and the leads and the end result that they want through social strategy. It's clearly a longer term play, but I think that the results are meaningful and really
Hmm.
something that anyone who at a hardcore understanding of SEO understands that it pays big benefits in the long term.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, like the thing is that even if you are going to spend money on ads, like it would be a shame to get to like spend that money and get all these people, these eyeballs or whatever on your content, and then to not actually nurture them. So what this strategy does is not only does it actually get you discovered organically, but even if you did put money behind your own ads, when they are in your community or universe, whether that's on email or social media, like you want to be nurturing them in a way that is authentic as well. And that's exactly what this strategy and what Capsho as a platform helps people do.
Well, I'll share with you in just sharing a personal story. In my last company, which actually did quite a bit of paid advertising. It was really just unbelievable. Once we ramped up the level of SEO and the level of organic search and content, the deeper, more meaningful relationships that we were able to establish
Mm-hmm.
with our customers and with our followers and all of that. So it really has a lot of benefits other than, let's face it, paid advertising can be like a drug. Once
Yes.
once you get on that bandwagon, it's very hard
Yes.
to get off. So,
Yes.
it's so important. And, when I started on the internet, advertising was a penny a click. I'm dating
Mm-hmm.
myself, but, there was no reason not to do paid advertising. But at this point, it really has ramped up to the point where a lot of the paid ad platforms just are requiring ever increasing profits,
Mm-hmm.
for stockholders and shareholders and all of that. And for anyone that's sitting out there listening to this, that at the end of the day, you need to drive, profit to your bottom line. And I think this solution does exactly that. So really very, very helpful. Can you give our listeners an idea? Are there different, as they're looking at the platform to get started? Are there different levels of you know pricing, or is it just one package that gives full access to everything,
Yeah.
or how does it work?
Yes. So for now, especially at the founding member, you get this. We just have the one.
Okay, great.
the one package or the one offer. But ultimately, as we continue to build Capture out, then yes, there will be, probably a couple different plans.
Okay, all right. So now is the time to jump aboard, it sounds
Now
like.
is the time to get in. Exactly.
Great.
This
And
is it.
just one last question I'll leave you with.
Hmm.
What was it, on a personal level that in your background that really led you to start CapShow? What was it that
Um, I really think it was going through the struggle of okay, so my first uh, my first journey into entrepreneurship was very different because it was actually in hospitality. My husband and I opened dessert bars back in
Sure.
Sydney. So product based, it was like physical bricks and mortar, very very different business. But the cool thing about that business was that being product based and being visually, it was a very visual. We had to appeal people in a visual sense, and that was actually relatively easy to do on the likes of social media.
Right?
And then when it got into coaching, 4 years ago, I realized that it was a very, very different game in terms of trying to get discovered on through social media and on the internet, because it wasn't about creating something visually appealing. Like it was seriously like Michael. It was so easy back then to we would post just this like mouth watering photo of a dessert. We probably didn't even have to say anything in the caption. Like honestly, it
Yeah,
was like
it got the
because
point
the image
across. Yeah.
itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, when you're an expert based business, which a lot of coaches, consultants, and service providers are, like you don't have that luxury. And so, because I went through that struggle of like, how do I actually promote myself or what it is that I do in a way that is authentic to me and that actually gets results, like that was probably for me the point at which I was like, oh gosh, I haven't gotten this figured out yet. And so that led me down the whole like nerding out on content marketing and things like that,
Sure.
and that led to Capture.
I love it. I love it. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time out to show us some of the secrets of what you're doing over there. I think it's really helpful and kind of helps. It's an appreciated peek behind the curtain to
Yeah.
really understand what's going on. And I know that you're joining us on our webinar, I believe, coming up
Yes.
next week, right?
Oh, I am. Yes. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so excited
So
about that.
yeah, every next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us
Hmm.
for our next weekly webinar. And coming up tomorrow on our 3 p.m. live stream, we'll be unlocking the power of AI to transform coaching. Our next guest, Raymond Aaron, is the founder of the Raymond Aaron Group. And with their brainchild coaching certification program, they're pioneering AI driven coaching solutions that are turning heads. Raymond will share how this cutting edge technology is revolutionizing the way coaches connect with clients and drive breakthrough results. So be sure to tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And as far as giveaways and things like that, be sure to visit softwareoasis.com to sign up for our weekly software newsletter. And we're giving away a free marketing strategy template to help you attract and engage and convert customers and leads. So be sure to sign up for our template. And once again, Deirdre Chen from CapShow, thank you so much for joining us on the Software Spotlight this week.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute honor to be here.
Thank you so much.